there, this is Pastor Jeff. I'm here in my office. We're playing a little bit of catch up. So this is the sermon for March 30th, 2025. It was the fourth Sunday in Lent. Our gospel reading for that day was a little bit of a longer one. The Gospel of Luke chapter 15, verses 1 through 3 and 11 through 32. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of wealth that will belong to me." So he divided his assets between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and traveled to a distant region. And there he squandered his wealth in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the region, and he began to be in need. So he went out and he hired himself out to one of the citizens of the region, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread and enough to spare? But I am dying of hunger. I will get up and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off, and he went to his father. But while he was still off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was out in the field, and he came and he approached the house. He heard the music and the dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked him what was going on. And he replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered to his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a younger goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours comes back, who has devoured your assets with prostitutes, you kill the fatted calf for him?' And then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost, and now he has been found.'" The word of the Lord. Wow, a beloved parable. In a recent survey, this parable was ranked as one of the most famous parables of all time. Everyone seems to know the parable, and everyone seems to have an opinion about this parable that makes preaching this text a challenge and a half. Part of the challenge in preaching this text is that once you hear the words, "A man had 2 sons," you quit listening. Thus, I implore you to listen to the passage once again, and I ask you to be open to the possibility that you might learn something new today. I'm also going to ask you to set aside allegorizing the story. It is too easy to assign the dad and the 2 sons to identities, if we have the courage to resist allegorization, we open ourselves up to the greater possibility of reading and hearing the parable as if we don't already know what it says and what the outcomes will be. And I know that is super challenging. Before we dive deep into this parable, we have to understand the context of Jesus sharing this story with us. Today, the lectionary helps us by allowing us to hear the first 3 verses of chapter 15 before diving into the story in verse 11. Jesus sharing this story is in direct response of the Pharisees and the scribes that are criticizing Jesus. They were unhappy with Jesus. Can you believe the audacity of Jesus? He hung out with the sinners of the day. What in the world was he thinking? Now, the lectionary also skipped verses. The other verses are captured at another time, and so that is one reason. But I believe the writers of the lectionary knew that most individuals would know the story of the number of 3 parables that Jesus was telling. The other 2 stories were very short. He shared about a lost coin and a lost sheep. I had not really dwelt on it much before this week. I was glued into the fact that in this 3rd story, Jesus moves away from society's more invisible members. In story 1, he shared a story about a shepherd. In story 2, he shared about a woman. In today's story, he takes us into the life of a privileged family. This parable is also more complex than the other 2. This story also has ambiguities. There are thousands of ELCA pastors preaching this text this morning, and many of us interpret the story differently. Today, whether you consider yourself lucky or unlucky, you get to hear the story and interpretation through PJ's lens. The PJ's lens this time has shifted as well. The shift comes through reading some commentaries that I knew that would have a different take. This story has so much tension, and today I wanted to focus more time on the dad and the younger son. The younger son comes to his dad and makes this outlandish request. He wants his inheritance now. In essence, the son was hoping that his father was dead. There is nothing in their culture where a dad would be compelled to grant the request. The father then appears to be generous in a very reckless manner. His son has laid a proposition to him that would bring him much shame. The community would not think that the dad is generous. Instead, they would think that he was foolhardy. He would then be the butt of many jokes in town. When the son returns, the father does something out of the ordinary. He runs to his son. Dignified men just don't do that. However, this dad has been longing for his son's return. Thus, it is a natural reaction. Debate might be too strong of a word, so I will go with disgust. At our Bible study on Tuesday, we discussed whether we believe that the son was repenting earnestly or if the son was simply a manipulative and dishonest human being. I think that you could argue both sides. However, I think that the response of the dad is more important. The dad welcomed him back. The dad began the welcome even before the son was able to give dad the speech that he had prepared. Isn't it a beautiful thing that even the scoundrels are joyfully welcomed into God's kingdom? In our story, we see a father welcoming his son and restoring him fully. The dad did not welcome him back as a servant working the back 40. He restored him fully as his son. If we had time, we could dive into the family dynamics and see how the relationship between the two brothers were jeopardized. We could also look at the older son and wonder what emotions that he had to be dealing with. There's a lot going on there. But what I love about the story is that Jesus has the father calling the elder son, son. The dad confirmed his elder son identity in the family. The dad in the story reaches out to both of his sons. He crosses over the threshold of the house 2 different times. The first time he crosses over, he does so to welcome his younger son home. The second time he crosses the threshold, he invites his eldest to the party. The father cannot imagine there being a party without both of his sons being present. As I close out this message, I want to share with you that in our Bible study, we talked about how at different parts of our lives, we have all been the father, the eldest son, and the youngest son. The parable invites us to sit with the younger son and the messiness of his own making. It asks us to examine ourselves and wrestle hard when we identify as the eldest son who battles with bitterness and has a real fear of being overlooked. What about Dad, the father who leaves the comfort of his home to bring in all that is lost and all that feels forsaken? The truth of this story invites us into a deeper relationship with the text than what allegorization allows. Part of the reason the story is so compelling and so beloved is because we are never only one of those characters. So let me ask you these 3 questions. 1, who among us has not squandered the love that we have been given? 2, who among us has not felt the bitter sting of insecurity and fear at being left out? And 3, who among us has not chased after love, hoping it will be returned? As we depart from this holy space, may we know without a shadow of a doubt that we have a God who will leave the threshold to come find us when we are lost. And this is also most certainly true. We have a God that will invite us to the party in the midst of our fear of being left out. Amen.